So we hear a lot of different talks about Canadian Mint chip. Just recently they said that the U.S. Post Office is going to put out their own white paper on possibly doing a Bitcoin exchange, which makes a little sense when you think they do money orders and things like that. Now you've got major companies like Tiger Direct accepting Bitcoin. You've got major banks that are really looking into this. What do you guys think is going to be the next really big play? What's going to the big shift when a major, really big enterprise, someone like Amazon, Google, B of A, really jumps into digital currency?
Just to jump in, I think again, these things should be seamlessly integrated with our existing devices and sort of on ramps and off ramps. So pretty clearly, you should these things really get accepted and the reputational risk goes down. You should see them bridging into credit cards. You should be seeing them bridging into SWIFT, ACH. All these things should sort of merge together. And once you have that, it's kind of this idea that it's accepted anywhere. It's sort of a moot point. It's just value of any kind is accepted globally by just about anybody. And we shouldn't be talking about having to win over, with some of these big players. A lot of these big players are really just making PR announcements, just get in the PR stream. That's good, but what you need is the fundamental bridging to the existing system.
I see something that's happening, which is that e-commerce, especially when it comes to video games, video game credits, is really being a driver for Bitcoin, because you got a lot of people who don't have credit cards already, so they're not able to integrate with a lot of the online systems. But they can go down to a local 7-Eleven, buy card for like Steam credits or Xbox or PSN, and be able to get video games. And this is something that Bitcoin really does very, very well, because they can potentially get the games cheaper. They can, they're really early adopters in a different sense. And when you look at what's happening with the banks, really banks are like the most conservative people as far as investors go, at least today. And the most conservative investors still haven't jumped on Bitcoin, so they're still trying to figure it out so they can feel comfortable with it. But it's probably less than a year before a big bank decides to really push it in America and make a lot of money off of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to have many more merchants come in and start accepting Bitcoin, and that's when the bigger players are going to really pay attention to it. So right now we see that 90% of our business is e-commerce. We have the electronics companies coming after us, or not coming after us, but coming to us and asking to, tell them about Bitcoin and how, explain how we can integrate with them. We also have, we think the travel industry is going to be big. Right now you can go to Virgin Galactic and pay for, space travel if you'd like with Bitcoin, but I'd like Virgin America to accept it. I'd like Delta Airlines. I'd like everyone out there to accept it, especially the airlines, because now you can get on a plane, of course, and go to another country, and hopefully in the near future you can get off and go to a restaurant that you don't have to worry about exchanging back to local currency. You can just go and say, I'd like to pay in Bitcoin. So we think that electronics, gaming, like you said, the travel industry, I think, is going to be another area that picks up, and then the others are going to jump in.
So if we look at Bitcoin and Ripple as well, there's different areas that have been hot over time. Exchanges were huge. Then everybody wanted to make a wallet. Now there's probably at least 3 or 4 companies making ATMs. Payment processors, I think there's only a couple of you guys, but and they're definitely dominated by BitPay and Coinbase. But I'm curious what you guys think is going to be the next big thing in digital currencies, and what's the next business model everyone's going to get into? Prepaid cards?
Yeah, I think prepaid. I agree.
It seems like the last mile. So of course I'm going to say that I think it's prepaid. It's really hard to say what kind of technological evolution that Bitcoin's going to make. I'm still very much an investor in Litecoin and Ripple. I really feel like it's more about changing the way that we look at moving money, because suddenly you don't need armored cars to move money. And that's such a big deal if you don't look at everything else. And people are still turning on to it. So it's really, I think that we just haven't hit the tipping point yet. And that's inevitable, I think, at this point, because people are seeing that value and telling their friends about it.
Yeah, I think on the consumer side, that's really where we need the most help, when we need companies to focus on helping people buy Bitcoin, as you mentioned. And it's truly, I have so many people that come up to me and they say, I want to buy Bitcoin, but where do I get it? And I'm like, well, I get paid in Bitcoin, so I'll point you in a direction, and then you can go off and buy from someone over in the corner who has Bitcoin, or localbitcoins.com or whatever it may be. But I think that's what the next big thing is, because like I said, with Sacramento Kings coming out now. There are people that want to pay for their tickets with Bitcoin, but they don't know how to get it.
And I agree. I think you need to have more front-end ways of getting money into the system. So more services like Coinbase. I mean, it's a nice service. The problem is, again, a lot of that's based on a unique regulatory relationship that they got early on and kind of got grandfathered before the banks sort of stepped back again. So again, a lot of this rests on that reputational risk, so that more entrepreneurs can build, easy to use, kind of cash in areas.
Can Ripple help with that? I mean, is that something that can make it easier to get Bitcoins through Ripple?
We're working on that. We're working on something where we can kind of get a regulatory package, and maybe then we can, help, with incubating smaller companies that are really good at UI, for example, but don't have the sort of the compliance or the regulatory part of it. So working on it. It's going to be, going to be a while. But that's sorely needed to get a level playing field. And then I think also security, you already know, like when funds are kind of looking at the space and, they kind of get involved, and then it's like, okay, how am I going to get that stuff? Or wait a minute, how am I going to secure that? And so that's really in its infancy, and that needs to, so there's a lot of startups will make a ton of money on just the security aspects of cryptocurrencies.
Oh, for sure. So we all love talking about regulation. So what's your current thoughts? They're actually laying out regulations. New York came out and they said they're looking at this bit license and whatnot, which is amazing because when we all first started, there was no regulation. It was all just complete confusion and lack of guidance. So do you think this is a positive, and where do you think this is going?
Ben Bernanke writing a letter saying that we should be permissive of decentralized currencies was a big signal for me. It didn't seem to move the market in the way that I expected, but certainly you've got I would say a movement within the American government for being permissive of this in the same way that they want to encourage Silicon Valley. And they don't want to lose out to another country in terms of innovation, and this is clearly a big one. So, it seems like they're being cautiously permissive from a regulatory perspective, and there's, I haven't heard of any lobbying to the for the other side either. So it's not like there's pushback.
Yeah, I think it's been friendly so far. Our CEO Tony Gallippi was called before the Senate hearing at the end of last year, and we didn't know what kind of questions were going to come at us, and they were very, they want to know more about Bitcoin. They want to understand how they can protect consumers. And so to date, I think it's been very positive, and we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I think good developments mostly. I'd say last summer it was really negative, and you saw a lot more reputational risk put on the table. It was a step back. The hearings in the Senate were really good. We did a couple visits to Washington, presented at Treasury. I thought the response was really good, and they kind of woke up to the fact these are non-anonymous systems. So the kind of the fear of terrorism seemed to have gone down a notch, and that these things are actually really constructive things for the global economy. I think that message is getting through. There's a lot of work to do, though. I think they were just in education mode. It's in a pretty good place talking about the U.S. Next, we'll be sort of delivering. As more people get in, there's going to be more. There's going to be more frauds. There's going to be more consumers that are going to complain. Probably it's another wave of regulation that's coming. CFPB hasn't even weighed in yet. Reg E hasn't even been applied yet. That said, though, I think also if a bank steps forward, a big bank, that would probably make the regulators move forward even faster. So it's kind of a little bit of a face-off going on. If a big bank goes before the regulators will step up. Regulators come forward more banks will step up. I think the U.S. is kind of leading again on regulation. Wasn't that way for a while, but given what happened in China and in India, and Europe's pretty good, but I'd say there's a lot more attention now in the U.S. So I think that's good.
Okay, back to something happy.
Sorry.
So I really like all the things you can do with Bitcoin, and I'm assuming with Ripple, that don't have anything to do with money. There's a lot of platforms that people are working on, be it sending messages. The fact that we have a distributed, blockchain that's essentially a written record that can't be changed, that's verifiable, that's not controlled by a third party is a pretty amazing breakthrough. We didn't have that, throughout history, and then we saw it with Bitcoin, and then we saw it right away after that with Ripple. Are there any technologies that are not directly related to money that you really like, that you've seen built on blockchain? And is there anything coming in Ripple that doesn't necessarily have to do with money that you can use Ripple for?
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the ton of stuff that's being worked on, and it's super, super exciting. And again, it could be just the beginning of a much broader thing than money that may go well beyond the blockchain. I mean, there's some arguments to be made, and I think Ethereum is interesting, and it sort of recognizes that they're building that stuff outside the blockchain. You might get pressure from some investors in Bitcoin that say, look, Bitcoin's working, it's succeeded, don't mess with the blockchain. Because if you got something kind of really valuable in the blockchain like gold, it might change, I don't know, it might change the dynamics of attacks. So, and you don't have to really build in there. You could build other things that then, Bitcoin can get into, like Ethereum, I think is kind of recognizing that. And I think that's what Ripple does as well. So there's kind of special use cases for different kinds of protocols, but you can kind of see the whole ecosystem working together. So good, that's good for everybody. We're definitely working on contracts, scripting language that's coming. Stefan Thomas is absolutely, he's here today, but a genius, as smart as are the guys here, David and the whole crew. And that's going to be really exciting because that will allow you to use all kinds of non-monetary task and utility, which just extends the movement. So I think that's good.
I think that there's probably an opportunity for distribution of information in different ways. I've had friends talk to me about trying to store more kind of personal information about health in a kind of blockchain type system. Obviously, notarizing documents is the most easy and straightforward one. It makes a lot of sense because you can say, I promise to do X and put it in the blockchain and it just works. You don't really have to do anything special with Bitcoin. You can just send a very, very small amount of money and that works. And so it creates these really interesting situations where you can get rid of that third-party trust. And again, like Chris was saying, script things that really kind of allow us to do more dynamic things with money and value. And it's sometimes value is not in the traditional sense of gold, but something about yourself. So it's a lot of potential there.
Paige, do you have anything you want to add?
Not really, because I'm all about the money. No, but we have the payroll API through BitPay, which is really great. So now you can start accepting Bitcoin through payroll, and you don't have to go out there and buy from other people. So, like I said, I'm pretty much focused on acquiring merchants and helping them accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. That's where I'm staying right now.
Okay, very cool. If you guys have any statements you want to make or anything you want to say, if not, I'll go ahead and open up to the audience.
I'd like to talk with anybody in the banking industry who's serious.
If you would like to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, please talk to me afterwards.
All good.
Okay. Alrighty. Where do we want to? Microphone right over there, right here. How are we on time? I know we don't have another panel after this or anything, but I'm so used to being rushed. What do we?
10 minutes before the party.
Okay.
Test, test, good. Come on up and ask them questions.
That's pretty close.
Sorry, I just kind of ran to the front.
That's okay.
Thank you, it's really interesting. It seems like now regulators and the government are sort of viewing Bitcoin sort of like a hybrid security / gold thing. And I'm wondering, as Bitcoin becomes more ubiquitous as an actual currency, and more and more people get paid with it and things like that, how do you think government regulators are going to react to that?
Does it cause a problem for anything that they're doing currently? As long as you're really working towards not doing money laundering and working in as one of the good guys in the space, I don't think the regulators care quite the same way. It's when they have to deal with constituents who are complaining, when they feel like that they might be opening up themselves to major money laundering problems. That's when they get concerned. So yeah.
Yeah, and as BitPay being a payment processor, we don't have to be regulated as other Bitcoin companies will be because we're not holding on to Bitcoin, we're just passing it through. It only, like I said before, only time will tell and what's going to happen, but as more and more people get into Bitcoin and as these companies come forward and become successful, there's going to be more regulation around that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we learned about regulation, it's not logical. It doesn't work in a way that we would predict or we would think makes any sense. It kind of depends on who grabs it first. So if the SEC grabs it, or the CFTC grabs it, or CFPB grabs it first, or the Fed grabs it, there's a completely different outcomes, and it's kind of random, unfortunately. So the industry can kind of move in one direction, which is probably CFTC is pretty good option. CPP would be okay. Fed would be awesome, but that's probably just not going to happen. So.
My biggest concern right now for me, and also for recommending people to buy Bitcoin, is how they can actually keep them somewhere safely. And I don't even know what to tell people. I mean, the only place that I would feel remotely safe maybe is Coinbase, but is that even safe? It's not insured in any way. If you keep it if you put it in an offline wallet, that's you have various risks of losing information, that sort of thing. And if you keep it in blockchain.info, that's not necessarily secure, and you have to worry about your computer being spied on, this sort of thing. There's not really any way I know of that's really both straightforward and secure. And so I have a hard time telling people that they should have Bitcoin, because then I feel responsible if they get stolen.
I'll answer a question for a change here.
Wow.
Yeah, it just feels weird. I've never been the moderator. So everybody says that you should download a brand new laptop or buy one, reformat it, install Linux. You should hash the Linux to make sure that there's no man in the middle, somebody giving you a fake Linux. Never touch the internet again, generate keys, and it confuses me, and I'm fairly technical. There's no way I would suggest that my mom tries to install Linux and all this stuff. There's a company called Piper Wallet that really addressed it. Actually, CEO's over there. I don't know if you got one with you? I don't have one with me, but I have what it prints out. Okay, so it's a black box that's about 4 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches. You push a button and it prints out a paper private key, public key pair that has never touched the internet. If you lose that, you're screwed. So make a copy of it. Put it somewhere safe and another one somewhere else safe. But it's $200 or $300 and it solves the entire problem without having to get a separate computer and download all that stuff. Other than that, that is like the biggest threat, and it's extremely scary. And the more you have, the scarier it gets. And as time goes by, it's been getting even scarier. So, excellent question. Do you guys have something easier?
Blockchain is good though.
Oh, blockchain. I love blockchain.info is great. Yeah.
I tell everybody, so if that's not good advice, I feel bad about that. But no, I think blockchain is an excellent way of holding on to your Bitcoin, because even if you use Coinbase to buy Bitcoin, they are in control of your private keys. So why not have it moved over to blockchain where you're in control of your Bitcoin?
The problem with blockchain is you still have to log into it on your computer, and if there's a keylogger on your system, then you're screwed. And I try to be pretty secure. I'm on a Mac and whatever, but I don't know if there could be a Chrome extension or something like that. It's really not an ideal or a secure way to store Bitcoin. I don't think. It's a lot better than a lot of other solutions, but I don't see that as. I can't recommend blockchain. I use blockchain myself, but I can't recommend it to other people and feel secure about it.
Right. So I agree. If you're going to do something online and digital, blockchain's probably your best solution, but you're better off, backing it up online on a computer that's never touched the internet. And if you're going to go that route, I'd use Piper Wallet, because trying to install that on a machine, then it depends how paranoid you are, but there's things that can go wrong.
So I've got a new Bitcoin security company that works on exactly this problem. If you've got a wallet vendor or if you've got an exchange, please talk to me.
Commercial.
My question's relating to altcoins, and it's great to see Chris with the stuff Ripple's doing. You guys are a second in terms of market capitalization there, up next to Bitcoin. I personally just trade these things because I'm very fascinated with them and what's going on, and I see it as being in the inception of something very interesting. I see that there is commerce there, with BitPay, but more specifically for me, what I'm seeing is with the advent of these altcoins like Coworking and Veercoin, you're seeing a drive up in the prices, like Veercoin, for instance, was driven up like some 4,000% in the last 2 days. So I'm just curious if anybody on the panel can kind of answer in terms of like the advent of these other exchanges and altcoins, how that's going to lubricate the system as more coins come onto various exchanges, and then also being able to be converted back into Bitcoin, which for myself, and I don't mean to draw on here, but I think it's a very big, important issue, is arbitrage. And I see that there's a lot of disparities between the various cryptocurrencies. Some are way out to the right, and others are way out to the left. So you're seeing arbitrage opportunities. So I'm just curious, where you guys see altcoins coming into play.
What do they actually bring to the table? I think is usually the big question is, like, are they actually doing something that's different from Bitcoin? Are they just literally a clone? They may have speculative power, but do they have merchants on the network? These are all really big questions because they go to, is the payment network that's there something that's powerful or like just a flash in the pan? So I wouldn't necessarily buy like every single altcoin that's out there because a lot of them are just direct clones of Litecoin and things like that. And it's like BitTorrent. BitTorrent hasn't really been replaced by anything, and that really replaced Napster, which was mostly centralized. So there's going to be evolution in the space, but how much is unclear. So I think that Ripple, Litecoin have both really good shots because they do things that are competitive to Bitcoin.
So I think with these new technologies, you probably are going to see an explosion of different things of value. I mean, it's pretty clear that's where the world is going. And you just have to see where that goes. It's kind of an exciting time. Who knows where it all goes from here, but the technology now enables somebody to, if you love this particular coin or this particular thing of value, whether that be an altcoin or whether that be merchant rewards from your local store. Like every store now basically has their own currency in kind of rebates. And as long as that piece of value can be seamlessly sent somewhere else and received as another thing of value, that's kind of what Ripple does. Great, and so these altcoins probably are successful if they get a following. They could get a following because there's some special utility for sure, or just because people love them, because maybe it represents something, or and there's so many small different communities. Say in America, we got 1% of anything is hugely successful, right? So you're probably going to see a lot more of that.
My wife loves Starbucks stars.
So there you go.
She told me I need to go buy more Starbucks.
Hi, I have a question, but first I'd like to make a comment about the security for wallets. At the beginning of 2013, there was something added to the blockchain that allows for M of N transactions, which means that you can have multi-signature transactions, just like a Google Authenticator and the like. And one company, there's probably several, but one company that I know is BitGo, has a website where basically you can make a wallet, and they hold one key and you hold others. You always have to have two, so they can never take your money, and you still have access to their money even if they fold up, because you still have two keys. So that's a potential solution. But my question for the panel is that I see, when I looked at the BitPay website, I saw tremendous benefits to a vendor using Bitcoin. And I see for miners and speculators and tech people the desire to use Bitcoin. But my question is, in order to make this really go big, to go public, what benefits can vendors provide to the people actually using the Bitcoin for purchases so that they get some benefit out of the system? Because right now there's friction in the system. You have to pay 1% to buy your Bitcoins with dollars. And then eventually, if you're going to sell out, you have to pay another % to come out. You're very lucky that you get paid in Bitcoins, but most of us are not. We're not that way. And then as a second kind of question with that, in addition to the benefits for the person who is buying, there's always the issue right now that a company receives Bitcoins, they don't really have anything to do with them. They sell them, they trade them for dollars. At what point do you foresee that supply chains would be allowed to, or that there would be enough demand in the marketplace that whole supply chains could function on Bitcoin? Thank you.
I guess that's mine. Well, one thing, for instance, I know that a lot of companies that are going to be coming forward and accepting Bitcoin, they are going to be offering discounts to consumers. So it's kind of like in Los Angeles, I see restaurants where it's 10% off if you pay in cash. And so they're going to be doing the same thing. They're going to have these promotions. I wish it had happened more around the holidays with right around Thanksgiving with Black Friday. We saw a huge spike in Bitcoin purchases, but it was also because so many vendors came forward and said, we want to offer a discount if you pay in Bitcoin. So I think that's going to help on that side. Do you have any other comments before I dive into the other question, or do you have any question or any comments?
I mean, I think it's win-win for merchants. There's not really a downside, so there's a lot of reasons too. I mean, I was talking to my wife's sister, and she works in a bike shop, and they don't ship bikes over the internet for sale because of the chargeback problem. But I mentioned Bitcoin as being an alternative since it's cash up front, and it confused her. I mean, it was really interesting because Bitcoin is allowing for different dynamics within money, and I don't think it's one thing that's going to make a tipping point. I think it's going to be a lot of people and a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah, people want to hold Bitcoin because, again, they believe that fiat currency is going to be debased. So, again, it's this idea of kind of a digital gold that can be sent around. So for people in the world that want to hold a thing of value like that, they should be able to send it to anybody that doesn't have any idea what that is, and they just seamlessly get whatever thing of value they want, whether that be Bitcoin or dollar or whatever. So I think the technology can do that today. I think that's probably where we're going.
Yeah, I think it's B2C for now, and then it'll evolve to B2B. But right now, we need to get the consumers spending Bitcoin comfortably, and then we can deal with the others and the connections.
I really like to remind people that just because you don't see Bitcoin in brick and mortar stores today, doesn't mean that's a bad thing, because you don't see PayPal in brick and mortars the same way as you see credit cards either. So there are some chains that are adopting PayPal, but it's still, more stores don't have access to those kind of things, and that's been around for quite a long time now.
Although when you get completely integrated to the existing rails, you might be sending your Bitcoin and they have no idea that that's what you're even using, because it's just seamlessly integrated. So things are just kind of flowing around.
Regarding BitGo, next week we're going to air an episode with Mike and Will, founders of BitGo. We've already filmed it, and looking forward to releasing that.
Jered, at the beginning you mentioned an anecdote about someone who just deleted 10,000 Bitcoins that you sent them. There are often news stories that you read about someone having lost some ungodly amount of money, never to see it return. Over time, of course, that's just going to pile up, and because there's only a limited amount that can be made, the number that are actually usable and spendable by people is going to be decreasing, but there's no real way to tell how many of them are dead and gone forever. And I'm wondering what you guys think about whether it's going to cause any problems for there to sort of be an uncertain number of Bitcoins that are spendable in terms of people trying to figure out how to value Bitcoin vis-a-vis other stores of value.
I'd imagine there's warehouses full of cash, dollars around. I've seen pictures come out of Mexico where, they've got, piles, rooms full of $100 bills. They say Pablo Escobar spent thousands of dollars in rubber bands every month, to wrap up $100 bills. So, that's definitely an issue. I think you are going to see that. I think you're going to have a point where some guy that says, I want to be a dollar billionaire now, he's been sitting on it for like 8 years, It could happen. I mean, there's people that have just ungodly amounts of Bitcoin. So it's a possibility, but I don't think it's going to shake things up too much. I think it's too difficult to really clear that amount. And I think when you look at an economy, a spooked economy is going to sell a lot more than one guy that wants to get some dollars and pay a lot of taxes. So I think when it comes to things like major scary events, be it regulation or people getting busted using something with Bitcoin, anything that spooks people or flash crashes, I think that thing can take a lot more of a hit on the economy than one guy cashing out.
I think it's with Bitcoins that are unspent or that are being held, it's something that you can kind of predict the probability that they'll ever get spent. It's kind of like how Satoshi hasn't redeemed any of his Bitcoins. Probably won't, but there's a possibility. But when you've got such a large system, you can start to make certain assumptions. And I'm not a mathematician, but I think it's something that you can calculate, and it just makes it more deflationary, if anything.
I don't really have a strong comment on this. So.
Good question, though. I haven't heard anybody ask that. It's nice. Anybody else got any questions? Or we want to wrap things up? Oh, Mr. Lai. What's his real name?
Great panel. One of the ways I see Bitcoin succeeding is by replacing money in places where money fails. Can you talk about some places that you've seen real-world customer experiences where Bitcoin would provide an exclusive incentive to participate in that good or service, and where money wouldn't, and then that would maybe drive adoption?
Minimum purchase $5.
Say that again.
Minimum purchase $5. I mean, that's the most American-centric one, I think. But if you look globally, capital control, I think places where they're actively trying not to let money move, Bitcoin is something that just happens organically. I mean, without regulation, without companies, it's still going to happen as the global economy wakes up to it.
I mean, anything that requires settlement or remittance, the fact that it can take, 3 days to have a transaction that's done and solid, why does it take 3 days in this age for me to send $20,000 to Europe and then have it guaranteed? And then the remittance market's about $500 billion a year, and Western Union averages something like 9.5%. Some people on smaller transactions pay up to like 25% to send their money down to Honduras or Ecuador. And these are people that don't have that much money, sending it to people that have even less, and they get screwed harder than everybody else, which is just, and we can just kill that. I mean, there's no reason, 21st century that we should, have problems like this.
Yeah. That's kind of why I keep on hitting on this idea of the tipping point and people waking up to it, because once people realize that there is a system that is cheaper, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is disruptive like Craigslist was to the newspapers, except we're talking about money, not newspapers.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you can have your website out there and you can have people looking at your website, but how can they pay you for your services? And now we have a way to touch so many more people here on the planet. So I think that's the big thing. And then, of course, the reduction in fees for the merchants. I mean, why wouldn't you accept a payment? Now, especially with BitPay, we've moved to a SaaS model. So you can pay a low monthly fee and then run as many transactions through as you'd like. And that's changing the payment space. Just because credit cards came out in the 1950s doesn't mean that we have to use them forever. And so Bitcoin is, money for the internet. It's a way of transmitting money that way.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize this is really a chronic problem right now, right? Where now you have pretty much the entire earth is wired on an information web. Everybody has access to the same marketplaces, but tons of people around the planet can't act on that information. So the idea of these math-based currency protocols is now you flatten our payment systems, layer that right into the internet, and now everybody has the data. Everybody can act on it with value exchange. And suddenly, you have just tremendously, increased commerce around the world.
1% isn't much compared to remittances, which the World Bank averages it being 8.5%. So, I mean, 1% in, 1% out is great comparatively.
Right. I mean, doesn't a large chunk of the money that's sent for foreign aid and everything just getting eaten up in fees and taken by the banks? Yeah. I mean, you donate to feed some kid in Africa, you send $20, and 12 of it gets there. Like that. It's ridiculous, So we can make the world a much better place just by improving on that and lowering fees. So let's wrap up the panel now. I've got beer in the back, got wine over here. If we run out, I have a ton of liquor. And
start with the liquor and then go to the wine and then go to the
scary
beer.
basement too.
Yeah, scary basement. So we got a band. Feel free. I would love if you sign up for the newsletter, which we'll be back on there in a second, just so I can spam you. And enjoy.
Thank you, Jered, for having us.
Thank you.